Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing about the more harder parts of playing Twisted. We're going to be talking about the thermodynamics, what they are, the risks, how to forecast them, and we're also going to be explaining the radar. So sit back, enjoy, and hopefully you learn something new. Now, first thing, and arguably one of the most exciting things about Twisted, is the thermodynamics. Now, what are they? And how do I forecast? Glad you asked. So, to start off, we have something called temperature. You probably have heard about it. It's just basically how hot it is outside. Nothing really else to it, nothing special about it. Now, if we move on over to its brother, dew point. Same thing, kinda. The two are very similar. The only difference is dew point is the measure of moisture in the air, and is basically the temperature at which the moisture in the air will turn into dew. So you get like that morning dew, you just kind of got that mugginess. And typically, if you have the dew point very close to the temperature, you're going to get some pretty good storms. And typically, the higher the dew point, the better chance of strong tornadoes you're going to get. Now moving on over to CAPE. What is CAPE? It is convective available potential energy. So it's just the energy in the atmosphere, and we measure it in joules per kilogram, which is basically you're taking a chunk of the atmosphere, like 1 kilogram chunk. So you're seeing it, you're looking into it, and you're just seeing how much energy is there, and we measure that in joules. So in Twisted, we have CAPE and 3 CAPE. CAPE is just overall energy in the atmosphere, and 3 CAPE, or 3 kilometer CAPE as what it's known in the actual field of meteorology, is basically we're looking at the energy in the atmosphere and from 0 to 3 kilometers into the atmosphere. That's the only difference. And then lapse rates, which is the rate that, temperature and dew points change as you go higher up into the sky, is very similar to that. It's just there's 2 different rates that are in Twisted, which is 0 to 3 kilometers, which you're looking at that height in the atmosphere, and then we also have 3 to 6, and we measure it in a degree Celsius per kilometer. So it's just a change between, let's say, 1 kilometer and 2 kilometers. It's just a difference in temperature and dew points. Now, PWAT. What is PWAT? It's a funky name. Well, it just stands for precipitable water. It's basically just kind of like the forecasted amount of rain you're going to get, or the amount of moisture, water, whatever you want to call it, in the atmosphere that's going to come down as precipitation. So like rain, snow, sleet, hail, you name it. Now, what is RH? What does it stand for? What is it? Well, it stands for relative humidity. So, it's the humidity, higher it is, typically the more, it feels like you're going to die from heat stroke when you step outside on a hot, muggy day. And in Twisted, we have 2 different ones. We have surface RH, surface relative humidity, which is just on the surface, which you're probably more familiar with. And then we have this thing called the 700 to 500 millibar relative humidity. Probably don't know what that is. So it's very similar. It's still relative humidity, except we're looking at a specific pressure in the atmosphere. And the reason why we look at pressure instead of like distance, like altitude, like with CAPE and lapse rates, is kind of due to different elevations on the ground. So you might come into the mountains, like Colorado, for example. It's really well known for this. And we're just looking at the pressure in the atmosphere and seeing the relative humidity there. Now, moving right along, we have something called SRH, Storm Relative Helicity. What that means is it's just the spin in the atmosphere. the amount of, like, basically how much the atmosphere it wants to spin. And usually the higher number, the more it wants to spin, the higher the spin is. And so typically we measure it in meters squared per second squared. It's basically just saying how much it is. Typically, to simplify, it's just higher number it is, more spin there is, better and stronger tornadoes you're going to witness. We also have a thing called storm motion. What's storm motion? Storm motion. It's just where the storm is going to go and how fast it's going to go. It's pretty nice to see, like beginning of the day, you know, where you should set up, where you should go. Just kind of make sure that, you know, that's good. You're in the correct spot, and nothing's gonna, like, you're not gonna miss the tornado. And then we move on to our composites. What's a composite? Well, first one that we have the STP, which stands for the Significant Tornado Parameter, which what it does is it takes pretty much a whole bunch of different values. So like K, there's another thing called shear, it takes in the storm relative helicity, takes in all these different numbers, and it just kind of condenses it down into one number. And typically, higher number, the more chance you're going to see a tornado. And for STP, for the Significant Tornado Parameter specifically, it's looking at the chances for an EF2 or above tornado. And typically you see this pretty high on like a high risk day. Like I've seen like 10 or 15, which is astonishingly high, which is something you see very rarely in like IRL during high risks or like moderate risks. And then we have its brother, the VTP, Violent Tornado Parameter, which is pretty much the exact same thing, except it's for EF4 and EF5 tornadoes. It's just the chances of those guys going to happen. And when you see that one off the like going off the charts, then you know, probably going to see Hazelton slapped, or you know, or Hibbing demolished for the 15th time in that server. And one of the last parts of our thermodynamics is the hodograph. What is it? It's a little bean guy. So basically, all what we're doing is when we send a weather balloon, you know, big old dude with a whole bunch of instruments, you watch it fly up. So what it does is it records the wind direction and wind speed. And we can chart that on a hodograph. So we go from on the surface to about 5 or 6 kilometers into the air. That's where we get most of our thermodynamics from. And so when we're looking at this, we can see which way the winds are going, how fast they're going, and which way they're going. And typically you want to look at the 0 to about 3 kilometers, which is typically you want to look at the purple and red parts of the segment on the hodograph. Those guys are the ones you want to look for. Now, to get a higher amount of what we like to call spin and overall shear, is to have it curved, like a macaroni noodle. When you see that little noodle like that, you know that the storms are going to be pretty good. Now, typically the storms tend to follow the shape of the hodograph, and usually when we get that, that's when you know you're going to get some good tornadoes, especially if they're curved. And we also measure storm relative helicity with it, and we typically take the values from 0 to about 3 kilometers, and typically the more curved it is, the higher the helicity. And yeah, now you know more about thermodynamics and Twisted. Alright, now on to the radar. What is the radar? Well, everybody knows the radar. Looking at storms. See what's up there. See what's up in the atmosphere. What the storm is doing. So, one of the most important things that typically everybody's going to look at is the TVS, or tornado vector symbol, or something like that. I'll put up a correction on the screen. So basically what it does is when we see rotation in on radar is we have this computer do a complex algorithm to figure out how fast approximately the winds are going. Now, this isn't always going to be 100% correct. You know, it's going to spit out a number like 109.652 miles per hour. It, you'll be like, I mean, it might spit out a number like that, but the tornado isn't going to be that exact number. It's usually just a rough estimate, so when you look at the radar, you see like, oh, it's a green, you know, it's not that high, you know, it's a pretty weak tornado, or when you get or when you see like a pink TVS, you know, when you see that, you know, you think, oh, this is a strong tornado. Maybe I shouldn't, you know, put my Dodge Charger into it. Now, one thing to note when we're talking about TVS is the color does not represent the EF scale. Okay, the EF scale goes by damage it causes, not by wind speeds. So you could have like a 300-mile-an-hour record breaker, and if it just hits, you know, like a tree or something, it's going to be an EF0, not an EF5. The winds have to hit something that is equal to the damage that it can cause. It's basically this is a good example if you have like an EF5 tornado, but it just hits that cherry you had in like by a lake, you know, and it topples it over, you know. It's only going to get an EF0, you know. Didn't hit anything. And yeah, that's basically TVS symbols. Pink TVSs are the ones you want to be looking for if you want to see a strong tornado hit Hazelton or Hibbing again. 15th time. Hibbing needs to catch a break. But yeah, anyways, we're moving on to the actual radar. What is the radar? How do we, like, what am I looking at when I see a radar? So we have, in Twisted, we have two different products. We have the reflectivity, which is probably the one you know about. It's been here since the radar was a thing in Twisted. You know, higher values, you know, more rain, maybe hail or something, or sometimes, you know, you might get like a debris ball and you see like grooves and pieces and whatnot in the atmosphere. You can sometimes get that. However, velocity is the more interesting one, which is looking at the winds and which way the winds are going. So I'm going to be simplifying the heck out of the radar. So basically all what a radar is doing is think of it as like you're shouting into the Grand Canyon and you're just listening back for your echo. That's what it is, you know. And with radar, since we're looking at like water and like clouds and whatnot, typically it's when you listen back, it's not going to be as loud, unless, you know, you're heading like airplane or Timmy's house down the street. Typically you don't get a full return. When you see like a full return, we like to call that noise on radars. Now, good thing we don't have that modeled in Twisted, or else that would be even, you know, really bad. But yeah, anyways, yeah, that's basically what it is. And velocity is as we're you know, we're shouting down the Grand Canyon, is when we listen back, is when we're shouting, we take note of the pitch that we're shouting. So if we're going like ah, and when we listen back, we're seeing if it goes or ah. So if it's going higher or lower. And basically with that, it's called the Doppler effect. It's same thing as when a car goes by, you know, it goes, you know, everybody's seeing it, like NASCAR, you know, when you're listening to that, you know, the changes in the noise. Same thing is we use with radars. It's really cool. And with radars, we can actually see first which way parts of the storm are going, and we can also see how fast they're going to or away from you. Now with the Doppler effect, we can only see if it's going towards or away from us. It's one of the downsides of the Doppler effect is we just can't see, like, we can only see if it's going away or to us. So we, on the radar image, so green is going towards us 9 times out of 10, so I think of it as green, you know, hey, a friend is coming over, you know, that's good. And then red is is moving away. It's more of the, oh, no, my friend is leaving, you know, I don't really want that. Think of it like that, you know. Red is good, red is coming towards you, or not red. I'm sorry. Green. Green is good. Green is good. Green is coming towards you. Red is going away. Now, when we see red going away from us and green coming towards us, that's when we have something that's called when we see rotation. Now, when we see a really tight rotation, 9 times out of 10, you probably got a Hazelton slapper on the ground. And with in Twisted, you can only see up to around 140 miles an hour, and any more of that, then it just the one pixel just doesn't show up. And when you can also see the approximate size of the tornado, typically by the rotation. The big, if you ever I've seen like a 2 mile wide area of rotation. It was a full-on wedge, beautiful. And then you also get like the really small ones. They are really cool, and overall, I highly suggest you go into more depth than what I have. It's the whole area of radar technology is really interesting. And speaking of radars, I'm going to tell you the difference between the KHZL or KHZL if you're American radar, which is the main Hazelton radar, which is what I'm going to be referring to it as. So the Hazelton radar is what's known as the WSR-88D, which is just kind of weather radar. The 88 stands for the year it was put into operation, and the D stands for Doppler. And basically what this radar is it can see pretty far out. It's got a pretty big area that it can see. It can see reflectivity, it can see velocity, it can see a whole bunch of other products. And it's got a whole bunch of these products. And typically, in real life, they scan from sometimes they can go from like 3 minutes to upwards of like 7 minutes per scan. Now, of course, in Twisted, you only have like 15, or if a Dow is there, it's lower than that. I think about 8 or 10. Of course, to make things more fair. But I think the actual time that passes by, I think it is about 5-ish minutes, which is about where it should be. And so, yeah, we also have 2 radars. We don't just have the Hazelton radar. We have a radar down in Hibbing. Now, this radar is a special radar. It's a whole another different radar than the Hazelton radar. It's what's called a terminal Doppler weather radar, or you might have more commonly heard about it as an airport radar, which is what we can call it in this case because it is at the Hibbing airport. Now, this one is pretty special for the fact that it has a much shorter range, and IRL they have a lower resolution, which I don't think is modeled in Twisted. No, it's not. But this radar, basically IRL, it can scan much faster, but it can see a shorter distance. Now, I don't think this one scans faster. I think both the radars scan at about the same rate, but the Hibbing airport radar, it can see a much shorter distance. But the advantage of this is it's in what we like to call a radar hole. So basically, it's where the Hazelton radar can't see, this one can. However, it's over in Viroqua, Postigo, Sire. That's a really bad area because you can't see anything on radar. It comes with the state. So that's why when you see us, when you're like in Viroqua, I see, hey, look, a storm, and you look at radar and you don't see it. It's in a radar hole. There's no radars that can see it. Yeah. But yeah, terminal Doppler weather radar, they're pretty cool, nifty things. Now these ones, they can only see reflectivity and velocity. They don't have any of the fancy other products that the Hazelton radar has IRL. Now, IRL, the airport radars, they can also have what's called a long range reflectivity, which has about the same range. I think that's a little slightly lower than the WSR-88Ds. However, they have a much lower resolution, so there's a fewer pixels, and it's you don't see as much basically. But you know, you find these in A, radar holes, and B, more metropolitan areas, because they're also used for, you know, for airports, so that they can see, you know, airplanes coming in, because they're more tuned for that. But they also have the benefit of seeing, you know, seeing clouds and storms and stuff like that. And that's pretty much the radar summarized. Hope you learned something cool about this. And so, that wraps everything up. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you can get out there and forecast a little bit better. And I hope you can understand more. And hopefully see you out there. So like and subscribe. Check out some of the other videos I've done. And if you're really interested, subscribe. And also comment on things that I could have done better, or other things, you know, you want to tell me about. Because I always read every single one of your comments, and I always enjoy reading them. Always go out and tell me. And this video was actually, I did this because we recently hit 50 subscribers. In fact, I think we're at like 51 or 52, which is insane. I think I've gotten like 15 subscribers in like the last like 2 weeks or something ridiculous like that, which is entirely unbelievable. Like, I can't believe you guys have done that. And I just want to say thank you, because this is my 50 subscriber special. I mean, I did ask you guys if you wanted to do, if you wanted me to save this for 100, for when I reach 100 subscribers, but you guys chose you wanted 50. And I know it wasn't really 50 on the dot. You know, I've been busy with school, and I've just been really busy. Been busy doing other things, but finally got the time today and sat down, brought you guys some pretty cool information. And once again, highly want you to, you know, go out on your own time and research this topic even more, because it is so incredibly like full of just information that you can find. Like, even I've been into meteorology, like really into it for like probably about a year or two now, probably 2 years, and like even I'm still learning more things. So I suggest you always you always want to learn more things, always be into it more, always try to, you know, always enhance your learning. So yeah, wraps it up. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you will watch some of my other videos. And, yeah, catch you around.